call to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Motion for approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Approval of the public hearing minutes, sanctuary at Howard Lake preliminary plat, CUP, PUD, and variance requests on 11/19/18.
So move. Second.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Approval of the public hearing minutes, Chapter 70 zoning text amendment, shoreland chapter, request on 11/19/18.
So moved. Second.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Approval of the planning commission meeting minutes on 11/19/18.
So move. Second.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye. Now we're going to have a public hearing and discussion, IUP residential zone business, David Pavoni, 16731 Potomac Street Northeast. Request pages 1 through 6 and enclosure, and at this time, I'd like to ask the secretary to read the notices published.
City of Columbus, notice of public hearing, interim use permit. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, December 5th, 2018, at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard in the City Hall located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to review a request by the applicant for a residential zone business interim use permit to allow the operation of an electrical contracting, networking, software, machine automation, and online sales business. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. The applicant is David Indiana Pavoni. Property address is 16731 Potomac Street Northeast, Columbus, Minnesota. Legal description as listed, signed by Elizabeth Mersko, zoning administrator.
Thank you. And at this time, if the applicant could please come forward. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. So if you can give us a lowdown on what you're doing.
Well, yeah, just like it says in here, it's just a small business, very unintrusive, hidden in the woods. I would like to make one change, though. Talking with Elizabeth about the application, I guess there can only be one name on an application or a entity. So I would like to change the entity from my wife and I to the business name, which is a Minnesota corporation of DAVCO, DAVCO Technologies Incorporated.
Just to clarify on the record, the code says it has to be in a person's name or an entity's name. And that's what's being clarified on the record. The applicant is still Dave and Deanna Pavoni.
But the permit is DAVCO.
Correct.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I was able to go out to the property. Thank you for allowing me to come out. It does have 58.4 acres, and I was not able to see any, from the area of the accessory building, any homes, any, where it would be visible at all because of the trees being so dense in the property. And I just want to know if you've read the finding and facts and the recommendations that were in the letter from our planner, Mr. Johnson?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is more for Elizabeth. I was looking at, on page 7, number 5, under the finding of facts, and it's requesting a 10-year IUP. And can we do 10 years? I thought we were 5 or under.
The permit term for a interim use permit for a residential zone business is up to 5 years.
Okay, so is that a point of contention there?
Actually, Dean brought this up before the meeting started.
Okay,
And you want to
I'll
talk
make a clarification now or later.
okay.
What's your preference?
now and get it out of the way?
So last week, when I put this together, I mentioned to Elizabeth that the request was for 10-year, and I think like many of you, we've written all 5-year permits. I could not find in the ordinance where the restriction existed for 5-year, in part because all I routinely look at is the interim use permit section of the ordinance, which, just for reference, is 7A-530, and then I look at the specific standards related to the residential zone business, which is 7A-806. After I wrote my report, Elizabeth had Jessica do a word search in the ordinance. And again, I apologize that since I've semi-retired, I only have a hard copy, so I wasn't able to do that. But in the section 7A-734, which is rural residential district interim uses, which describes which ones could be, and that's where the reference to dog kennels, residential zone businesses, antennas, things of that nature contains that. So a change in the finding at the end of the meeting, when you get to that point, would be to insert in number 5, a new sentence that would say something to the effect that section 7A-734 of the city code limits IUPs in the rural residential district to 5 years, except for communication towers. And then condition number 1 would be changed from 10 to 5. We don't have an option under the current language to issue more than 5 years. That's my mistake.
Couldn't we just change it to 5 years?
Pardon?
Can't we just change it to 5-year?
Yeah, in the recommendation, I would change 10 to 5, and I would also
don't.
make a clarification, just so that where we make a statement that the applicant is requesting tenure, that is a fact. That was on the application. But I think in order for the flow to work, if we added the provision that section X limits it to 5 years, then when you end up with conditions that say 5 instead of 10, it makes sense. That's just my suggestion.
That's why you want the code reference in there.
Pardon?
That's why you want the code reference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do it either way, Adam. Any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have one other question on number 9 in the findings of facts. Normal hours of operation will occur on weekdays. Will you have any Saturdays that you'll,
Yeah, I was hoping that they would make that what the code allows, Dean. I think we talked about that, having it be the full extent of the allowable time, which is Saturday.
Yeah, and
Weekends,
the
that
ordinance is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. I
Yeah.
think the application may have said through Friday, and it doesn't matter to me.
It did, but we talked and I had
Okay.
amended that.
So that's another potential change you can make at a point in time after the comments are made.
Sir? And the 5 years is okay?
I guess it'll have to be, I interpreted it a little differently. I know the attorney's been talking about it, but the 5 years will be fine.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Anything
The
else?
question was whether it was called out in the residential zoning at 5, but in the interim use it wasn't. So my contention is that the code is ambiguous, so that there's some contention in the code. So I think you could go either way, but at this point, the recommendation is 5 from the planner, so. Probably needs to be looked at.
Anything else?
Sir, this question's for Dean. With the question that he's brought up, and the fact that we don't have counsel here today, can we make it 10/5 under the advice of counsel next week?
You can do anything you want. Other than do something that you know is in conflict. I'm not certain what the ambiguity is, and I'm not challenging that one exists, but that's a legal question, and I never answer legal questions. I don't want to get in trouble any more than anybody else. So if you wanted to pass along to the council that, if allowable in the city code, that it could be 10, that you recommend 10, that's up to you.
Thank you, sir.
I can't counsel you in that.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the hearing to the public. Anyone from the public want to speak? Anyone from the public?
The one that's in the packet?
Garth, you have to forgive me. I got a little bit of a sinus infection here. My hearing's kind of shot tonight, but
You'll have to
name's
for-
Tom Olson. Live in Lionel, or Columbus, 1332 Lions Street. All right. Trying to see from that one. That picture from after the snowstorm we just had here in November? Can I ask the applicant that?
Actually, if you direct your questions to the
And can
planning.
you ask, is that the picture from after, I was out deer hunting when the November storm came through? I'm wondering if that's where that picture's from.
Do you know when that picture was taken?
Can you ask him?
I do not know when the picture was taken. My assumption is this is off the GIS system.
So that could be any, Dave, do you know when that picture was taken?
You have no idea, and your IUP? No idea of the exact time? Where's it from? The picture, right there, we're looking at.
Yeah, Tom, we keep.
The picture we're looking at, where's
Well,
it?
I'm not a technological wizard, but I do know this, that satellites from outer space that take pictures of the Earth are snapping shots at all different times. Some pictures that you see like this can be years old. I mean, we didn't hire a helicopter to go over there and take a picture of Dave's property yesterday, so I don't know that he can answer it. I know I can't answer it, so clearly sometime in the winter, there's snow on the.
Was it recent?
I don't know either. I don't know how those satellites work.
And Dave doesn't know either, and it's his IUP?
Well, I think that that's just, this is probably something off of something such as Google Earth. And we probably have to contact Google.
But you
to
should
see-
be able to put a date on it. Irrelevant, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna, but no one asked, so I didn't do.
This is off of Google Earth. That's his, I don't know if you can put them side by side. They look pretty damn similar to me. That is from 2002, 2005. That's where that picture's from. You know how old that is? 2005 to 2018.
That I
That's a
can
pretty
figure
big
that out.
spread.
Yep.
So why do you use an out-of-date photo for an IUP? That's over 13 years old. Get you something a little more current.
Didn't have anything to do with the IUP.
Is this what's on?
Yeah. I'm trying to blow it up a little bit. I don't have a computer capability. I'll get a different one for that. You ready here? So that's the same thing from that to this 13 years later. I blew up two pieces of it. Dave, that is an awful nice spread out there. That's the residence. And you make this one out. Down in this area here, that's where this is. The junkyard. Or storage. Dean, did you have this information when you were doing your recommendations?
I had the photo that was originally put up on the board.
All right. Let me give you another one.
Can you zoom in on that one, Elizabeth? Just
This photo here is from,
1 second.
can you go there? This is a storage area. Junk.
Is that cars? What is that?
It's, I don't know, you ask him. Stuff. Dave should know.
Well, we're talking to you, so
It's
I'm,
Dave's property.
well, right, but Dave, you're,
I don't have access.
you're addressing the planning commission, and so I'm asking you, is that, I can't see what that is. Do you have a close-up picture for us, or,
Here is a picture.
please?
Is that your file?
I haven't seen any of these, so I would like to see what we're looking at here.
Got an actual. We didn't get one, yeah.
Do you have some of those?
Jesse has one.
Jesse's got some
He's
pictures.
got a,
I have another one here, this is from 2010, that file's been there for a while. Maybe that shows a little bit better. The things that are there, a lot of the stuff that was there in 2010 is still there now. I don't think they're being used in business dealings. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but they're still outdoor junk. In your section 7A of 806, the ordinance says no outdoor display or storage of materials, products, debris, junk, or vehicles associated with residential zone businesses is permitted. And the application note on the IUP says no outdoor display of storage
Trying to
materials,
figure this out. Okay.
products, debris, junk, or otherwise be over either. This is from your. That from there. Planning Commission. And Dean over there, apparently a little misled, need to ask themselves why the applicant did not submit timely photos, 13 years old. The newer photo clearly shows the outside junk and storage not shown in the 2005 photos, nothing in there. Some junk has been there since 2010. And I know the mayor likes the facts. Dean Johnson, our planner, did not have access to factual information. He made his recommendation based on the 2005 image. If you look at the 2005 image, it's pristine, there's nothing there, absolutely nothing. This came later, about 2010, and so forth and so on. And from Dean's findings of fact in the paperwork, says there is no visible outside storage associated with the RZB, based on that first photo he was giving. So he wasn't given good information. Neither were you. My recommendation at this time, Planning Commission should defer recommendation until the application is resubmitted with factual information. Because what you got here isn't. And the mayor's a stickler on facts, and I think he'd back me up on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the public want to speak?
I'm Janet Haglund, 14025 Juilliard Street, Northeast in Columbus. So the ordinance also states that an IUP is not meant for a growing or larger business customarily located in a commercial zoned area, and it's meant to be temporary. So if you go on Google and you look up Daveco, on the Forest Lake Chamber of Commerce, it's listed as having a sales volume of $100 million. This is not a small business. It's on Cortera, which is a business directory, as having annual sales of $1 to $5 million with 20 employees. It's on BuzzFile as generating $2.3 million in annual revenue with approximately 12 people at this single location. And an older version of the Daveco website lists 12 full-time employees with $1.1 million in annual revenue, and I have copies of these I can submit. This is not a temporary business either. It's a large business that has 2 different locations, one listed in Forest Lake, one listed in Columbus, and that's not what an IUP is meant to cover. The other thing that I'd like to bring up that's highlighted by the pictures that Tom put up there is a section of the ordinance that says, proposed additions and renovations to principal and accessory buildings to be used for residential zone businesses shall not be permitted when such additions and renovations may be determined to jeopardize or limit the future property value. If you look at the recent picture up by the storage facility, it might be in one of the other pictures. Tom, did you have the one that shows the ground being prepared for an addition? Looks like there's going to be an addition, which isn't permitted if you do an IUP. So you should look into that as well. And then lastly, I would say I was at the Planning Commission and subsequent council meeting in April where Mr. Tom Swenson had come before you. He had had a prior IUP for 5 years and was asking for a renewal. He was asked a number of questions that I hope you also ask of Mayor Pavloni. I haven't heard them yet. He was asked to disclose what the commercial taxes he paid was. He was asked how long he planned to operate his business there, presumably because an IUP is supposed to be temporary. He was asked what the square footage of his barn where he conducted his business was, what his sales volume was, et cetera. I haven't heard any of these questions being asked yet. And ultimately, he was granted a 2-year renewal rather than the 5-year that he was requested. And if I recall the conversation correctly, he was also asked to start looking for another place for his business because Columbus, according to Mr. Daly, there was concern about the large number of automotive businesses operating in Columbus. So I just think that there's a precedent that was set there that you should think about. This is a guy who had a business, had no complaints, ran it underneath the terms of his IUP, and was denied a 5-year renewal and was only given 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public want to speak? Anyone else? Welcome.
Dennis Nelson, 8201 20th Avenue North, Lino. I just have one question to ask. Is why after all these years you have been in business, are you asking for an IUP at this time? I'd like to know why that came up so suddenly and why you didn't have it prior to that.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else?
But you know how to do that.
Pull it down, Elizabeth. There you go.
Yeah, there's a laser pointer.
It's up there. I don't know if anyone, oh, here you go. You can.
I'm Elroy Bird. Home sets right here. Turkey shed. So our property goes from here to the back. From the road here, it's a quarter mile back. So our property joins. And it goes all the way across the back, wind break down here. And so there's our property here. There's a small here, slide it here, 2.5 there. And we got 15 here, so the homestead is over here. Now, a lot involved. You know, when it comes to neighbors, my philosophy has always been, if
Mr. Berg, could you address the planning commission?
what's that?
Could you speak to us, the planning commission?
Yes, so,
Thank you.
but my philosophy has always been, you know, if neighbors can't help each other, what good are they? And like I say, we've been out there 48 years. I've had some wonderful neighbors. And we're one of the last ones there. We had a lot of change in neighbors. You know, kids got older, got married, and all this and that. And anyway, we've been there 48 years. And how long have you been there, Dave? Since 97. Since 97. And when did you build your big building? Shortly after. And so anyway, through the years, you know, Dave is an electrical engineer, which you probably all know. And he, what some people call junk, you know, is his treasures. But anyway, through the years, Dave has always invited my wife and I over for their yearly party, and we've gone just about every year. And we've always had, you know, good relationships. And Dave's got a nice family. In fact, I have a grandson that goes to school with his children. And so Dave and his wife is Dee or Danina? Dina. Yeah. And so anyway, every fall we have this party and I go over there. And of course, Dave has all of, you know, a lot of neighbors and his industrial people. And of course, he's involved heavy with industry. And so we have a good time over there and everything. And one day, Dave called me up and we were getting ready to go to a wedding. And Dave says, let's check out your tractor. And so I says to my wife, well, I don't have a lot of time, we gotta get going, but I'm gonna scoot over there. So I fired up my tractor and went over there and I says, what's the problem? Well, he said, a semi tractor that went off and it's down along this road way back there in the woods. So I went over there and pulled that semi out with my tractor. And that semi was pulling a flatbed, and it was right, oh golly, the road goes out here and it goes about right back in here. Its home is over in here. And that semi flatbed was loaded with steel structural girders that were the length of the semi or so, and it was piled full of those girders. And I don't know if you use those for one of your buildings or what you've done with them, but for quite some time they were stacked right along the pine trees here, right back in here. have photographs, a number of different photographs. When we first came out here, this is all open field here until Dave moved in here. Things began to change. And so anyway, we got that semi out of there and God, he put his girders where he wanted to. And I want to tell you folks something. You know, Dave is a very smart guy. And when my children and family and relatives come over to my home, when we look out our back window from right here, we're looking directly north. Now, it's a quarter mile from here to here, and I think that's from the middle of the road. So from the back of my home here, it's probably 11, 1,200 feet, quarter mile, 13, 20. And so we got a good view of what's back. And when my children come over to the house, friends and neighbors, what have you, they say, you know, what's all that stuff back there?
Excuse me, they don't say, "What's that stuff?"
Anyway, so I explained to them, well, you know, they said, what's all that junk? And I says, look, my neighbor doesn't buy junk. This stuff is all very valuable stuff. I mean, Dave doesn't bring home junk. It's stainless steel. It's regular steel. And rolls and rolls at times of copper cable and wire and what have you. I mean, call it what you want, but it's all quite valuable stuff, in my opinion. And my wife, I really get into it with her because I'm kind of a tolerance master. And I don't like to, I'm more of a lover than I am a fighter. And so I never really got on Dave and that kind of stuff.
It has gotten worse
Well,
the last
yes.
5, 6 years. In our back, looking out my dining room window into his junkyard is nothing but, excuse me, shit. It's gold to him, but it's shit to me. Anybody that comes in my home looks out my kitchen window or living room window and says, "What the hell have you got back there?"
You see, our home
just
here are
terrible.
on the second floor, so there's a beautiful view out to the north. So we've tolerated all through the years, and I've talked about Dave and all that, and however, like my wife says, you know, kind of a hand. And then one other thing I might mention is right back in here, almost every fall, we've tolerated this. And what happens here is Dave accumulates some lumber and some dead wood and so forth, and he takes his skid steer loader, he's got a lot of big equipment, and he piles it up in a pile right here, right in the middle, right straight. And he's out there burning this stuff almost every fall, about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, maybe even until 1 o'clock. And it shines in our bedroom window, which is on the north side here. And I've never really mentioned anything to him about that. But that occurs almost every fall. And a bonfire that goes up 50 feet in the air. And I was scared as hell one year. I thought I was going to get my cornfield on fire. Because right now you can see the field here. This year it's in corn. And so we've tolerated that through the years. And then there was a time where Dave says to me, hey, you got a yard light in your yard that keeps me awake at night. And I says, no, Elroy and Joanne do not have a yard light in our yard. That's my neighbor, Tom's. He used to be on the town board, Tom Clausen. He's next door to us. And, but that's where the light was coming from. But besides the light, fire and so forth, his skid steer loaders, all this commercial equipment has got a backup horn on it. It goes beep, beep, beep. And hell, from 11 o'clock at night to maybe 1 o'clock, we were just kept awake by that beep, 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 you know, on a nice fall evening. And we tolerated that. And so I think you folks can clearly understand, you know, what we put up here with, you know.
It is a junkyard back there, and when I have asked him many, many times, Dave knows. And he's even been up in my living room, looking out that window, and he looks right at me and he says, I'll get at it, I'll get at it.
Okay.
Never seen it.
Dave was over to our house just before the election, and he says, all right, you suppose I campaign sign, he says, in along, well, it would have gone right along the road here. And I said, no, I says, because I don't think I want my neighbors to know what political bid I. And then he went as far as to say to me, do you suppose that right back in here, when you bring the corn in, that you could leave 3-4 rows or so? And I said, well, why would you want me to do that? And he said, well, so you can't see that stuff. So that's, you can see the situation my wife and I have been tolerating.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jesus. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing with the right to reopen if necessary.
By the way, this photograph here I got from the United States Forest Service. They happened to go up to our area at one time looking for wildflowers, and the fellow said, would you like some photographs? This photograph here is dated 2011. And I have one that older that shows everything here.
Well, any further discussion
I think
on
so.
the IUP?
I didn't realize. Well, this is being kind of presented as a small business, is what I was seeing here. There seems to be a lot more facts here that, I didn't see any of this until now. And I didn't realize that there was going to be so many people here and so much contention. And a couple of questions, I had made some notes too on this, and we did really kind of run that guy, the car guy, through the ringer on all his points, and we made him have some testing, and didn't we, what was his name, the guy?
No, there was no testing.
I thought he
No,
had to
didn't
have.
no.
Oh, he didn't? I thought they were talking, but they set a precedent that we could do 2 or 3 years for him when he was asking for 5 and they didn't have any complaints. So nobody came and complained about him either. So I'm thinking we got a little more work to do here on this, tighten this up a little bit.
Let's get to work then. Get it
Yeah.
done.
Well, I was trying to write Janet's questions here, you know, and the one that stuck out in my mind is, we would like to know, I'd like to know, is he adding on?
You want me to bring him back up
I
here?
think so. I think we have to ask some questions. here.
Dave, can you come back up? There's some more questions here.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Okay. Hi, Dave. Are you adding on?
Yeah, I'm adding on.
Okay, so how many square feet are you going to have then?
It's, I think 1,500 or 14,000, I think.
Additional? Okay. So you intend to be here for a long haul?
What does that mean?
I mean, you're going to be running your business there. This is your spot that
Are you telling me, or
No,
you're
I'm asking you. I'm
Okay,
asking
So you
you.
should ask the question.
Okay, Dave, I apologize.
Okay.
Are you intending to run your business for quite some time?
No.
No, okay. Well, you're, okay, thank you. I apologize if I offended you. I'm just, this is a lot of new information, so I'm just trying to get through it here. And then I guess I'm going to direct this question to Dean then. Does this, Do we need to indicate anything in here about the addition?
I don't know anything about an addition.
Okay.
It's not in an application. So all of these businesses, and for that matter, all of the things that we go through public hearings on, we base on information that's supplied to us. And I don't recall anything in an application regarding a proposed addition. I don't know necessarily that that's out of the question, but that's not currently in the application. Part of the purpose of going through this process, or for businesses that go through a conditional use permit, is an opportunity to invite neighbors for the very purpose that we've done. And in the course of that, if there's clarification as a result of comments that are made at the hearing, we frequently amend our findings and/or recommendations. So that's part of the process. But my findings are based upon 5 pages of information that was submitted. Beyond that, I can't speculate. So I don't know that an addition is proposed. There was no sign in here to be added to the property. It would not be prohibited to have a sign, but again, I base our findings on what is in the application, and the final conditions are based upon what's consistent with the ordinance. So that's my structure. In terms of, again, if there's a pending new building, there'd have to be a permit applied for, and you'd have to revisit this. Is there an application for a permit right now?
There is not. But if you look on page 2, under K, what it says is, what it says is proposed additions and renovations to the principal, which is the house, and the accessory buildings to be used for the residential zone business shall not be permitted when such additions and renovations may be determined by the city to jeopardize or limit the future use of the property for normal residential purposes. And the answer to that question that was given to us is no additions and renovations to the principal, meaning the house, and the accessory buildings would be made that would jeopardize or limit the future use of the property for normal residential purposes. So the code does not say that you can't propose an addition. It talks about whether it would jeopardize and limit the future use of the property. And he has 53 acres, and this won't, whether he has an addition or not, will not jeopardize the use for residential purposes in the future.
Okay.
And then some of this talk about a building, I mean, it's kind of intermingled. I mean, if you have, we redid all the accessory buildings, square footage sizes of the structures.
We did.
And I think, wasn't it 10 acres? You hit 10 acres and you can put up quite a few square feet.
It's a formula
Yeah.
based on acres.
And then you hit a certain point, and was it like no limit? So,
No, it was.
I don't think, I still think the formula, I think the code stops, but the formula is still there, so you would still impose the formula for square footage.
so what does that have to do then with an IUP? If you have 65 acres or 53 or whatever it is, and you can build X amount, and you're following the city code, what does it have to do with a guy operating a business out of his house?
In this particular case, the specific questions in the code that we're required to look at is in a certain section, and the section is basically saying that generally, a residential zone business should not impact the property so that there's a problem with a future use. And in this case, it's an accessory building, so it's allowed in the district. Accessory buildings are permitted in the district, and so this addition will not impact a future residential use unless he subdivides the property, because the building would be too big and therefore you have to take it down. That's what most other people who subdivide have to do. They have to limit their square footage accordingly.
Makes sense. So, anything else?
No, I just thought information, so I just wanted to clarify.
I know there was another question about taxes, and at this point, this property has been classified as partial commercial, so there is commercial taxes being paid on the property.
And then there was some question about sales and how much money you're making. Do we have anything that defines small business versus,
I'm not sure where that particular excerpt was being read from. I'd have to look at the particular section.
it was brought up in testimony.
Was there a code section that was with it? Was it 806? So in your agenda packets on page 1, in 7A806, it indicates, it gives you some guidance for what residential zone businesses are structured under. So here it says that a residential zone business is clearly accessory and incidental to the principal residential use, and that it's a privilege and not a right. The use of the residence for a business is allowed only for those businesses that can be conducted on the property with literal or no impact to the adjacent residential uses. Residential zone business is not intended for a growing or larger business that is customarily located in the commercially zoned properties. And then it goes on to say the use of the residence for a business is considered temporary, which an IUP is considered a temporary use because it has a sunset. So a conditional use permit runs with the land that's for perpetuity, whereas an interim use permit is considered temporary and given a time frame. It also goes on to say it's not allowed to change the appearance of the residential property or affect the future use of the principal or accessory structures for residential purposes. So in that is all guiding language as to how we structured and how we allowed residential zone businesses in the rural residential district. But then it goes on A through R, and those are all of the conditions that have to be met or answered, and that's what the applicant did.
Any other questions or things to hash out?
Just one, sir. Dave, issues of screening on the south side. What can we do to take care of that?
I have talked to Elroy and his wife, and I think there's a confusion between what's business and what's just neighborly, what stuff we have. Elroy has abandoned cars outside. Elroy has a decrepit building. Elroy has lots of things out there that one could argue as well, and I've never brought that up to him. Is it what we want for Columbus? Does he have all, legal, perfect buildings with matching siding and everything? No, he does not. And I guess how far you want to go with the implementation of a proactive system. If the city would like to take on a proactive system, I'm sure we could use Google Earth, Anoka County GIS. We could find things that are on other people's property, like my neighbor has done to me and piled his stuff on my property with the same kind of stuff, what I would call junk, trailers and things that I've had to have him actually move off of my property. So Elroy and his wife are very, very nice people. I have nothing but, I enjoyed the tour of our existence together. It was kind of a reminiscent thing for me too. I think to the point of, can that be addressed? I have addressed it, and they're bringing up photos here from various times, past times. If you look at the newest photo, it shows very little that his wife can see out his window because I was being sensitive to that. If there's a fence to put up, or I could put up a shed or a building in front of that, I would, and I will. But at this point, I think this is and I really hate to have to go there, but this is could be the beginning of the end, could be the end of a very sour time in Columbus's history, where a group of people who don't agree with what representative democracy comes up with and decides to attack me personally, attack me with property tax issues where I have to go to the county and straighten that out, attack me with technicalities on my signage that I have put up to run for office. The first three people either don't live in Columbus or are miles from me and don't even know me, short of my decision about a particular asphalt plant. So it's going to be very educational when the future council comes in and they're addressed with issues like this, which is deciding neighborly fenced issues. The 5 acre minimum out here is a buffer, is a isolation to mitigate some of these issues that we have. So I'll be very interested to make sure that we can keep that 5 acre minimum to help this process out. It's almost to the point where I don't really even need to address what was said about me. These are a group of people that have hate in their heart, and I don't have hate in my heart. I believe that we need to all get along, and I've tried to get along with Elroy, and I have, and I'm sorry his wife hasn't been more forthcoming with me, because I've always talked to Elroy, but if this Hatfields and McCoy, this hate that is in our city continues, and Jesse, this is going to be on your plate. If this hate can't stop, then it's going to deteriorate any good that's happened over the last 8 years of my being mayor. So I'm just trying to do what's right. I'm just trying to have an interim use permit to run my business. The size of my business, and I will talk to you, Jesse, if I can, is a personal non-government issue, short of do I pay my taxes, which I do. So if you guys want to listen to someone who says I have a $100 million company in my little shed, I don't know what to say. It's just more of the lies that have been promoted over the last election season. These people want to get me. I'm trying to get a interim use permit to be in compliance with the code that is in our city. That's really all I have to say. I mean, I don't think I'm asking for anything or any special treatment that anyone else in the city hasn't gotten or should get.
Good. Any other questions, or?
Just one comment, sir. Having been in the back property, it's significantly less than what's been displayed. This is not representative of what I seen back there. And that's been,
I have to say,
the
I've
last
also visited Dave's property. I don't know, did you visit Dave's
I did
property?
not.
You did not? And did
I
everybody
did
else?
Sunday, and that does not depict what is there currently.
Yeah, I didn't see anything like that either.
So if I could just add one more thing. I guess I grew up poor. I'm a thrifty guy, and I have bar joists, and I have a tower crane, which is going to be used to build my house next year. I have insulation that I purchased at Menards and Home Depot when I can get it cheaper. I have windows for my new house. I have building material that's in that field. You can call it junk, you maybe not want to look at it. I understand, we can talk about that. But it's not junk. It's things that I use to build my house. It's things that I do for my recreation. It's things that I do for my hobbies that makes up who I am. And if you want to take that stuff away from me, then I think you've decided to take the spirit out of someone who pays a lot of taxes and does a good job in this society. So I hope that we can get to the bottom of this hate thing that's going on and just come to terms with it and move on and do the best. And the thing that I've done is to try to do the best for the city of Columbus, because we have a lot of great people here, and there is a divide, but it'll be up to Jesse as mayor to heal that divide and to come up with rules that are fair to everyone.
Thank you, sir. I can reopen the hearing.
Let's, I want to just a couple more things. So, I didn't feel like my questions were a personal attack. What I'm just doing is going through the, it just seemed like there was much more than was here.
No, I
So
think
wanted
he
to
was
I wanted to clarify that, and I felt that he was offended with that. And
Well, I don't think he was offended.
Well,
think-
I just
think
want
he
to
mistook
say,
your
I didn't have any
statement as a
hate. I just
question.
have,
Yeah.
there's a lot of new information that came down.
Get
And
that on the
so,
record. Pam has no hate in her
no hate
heart.
in my heart. Well, everybody's got a little, but.
But did you get all your questions? You were
You know,
concerned
and I
with
just
the
have
amount
one
of
more,
work that he
so,
had to
you know,
do tonight,
going
so.
to the rules and regulations here, so I guess I just want to look at page 4, number 1, G. And so, the conundrum is it's residential and he's running a business there. So, on the IUP, doesn't that state no outdoor display or storage of materials, products, debris, junk, you know, so forth? That's my question, so that's really kind of my one concern there in the zoning. So with that stuff on the property line, I mean, because it's residential, my question is, it's residential and it's business, but he's asking for an IUP, so wouldn't that apply?
Well, I think that's your conundrum, is it is residential. He lives there.
Right.
If he has hobbies, I mean,
So then that's okay.
Well, there's very few properties in this city that don't have junk in the yard.
And
A lot
that's-
of them are on 2 acres, 5 acres. I got neighbors, I could, you know, if I wanted to throw people under the bus, I'll throw myself under the bus.
Well, right,
I just
we all
got done
have
with a
stuff.
massive construction project. You fly Google Earth over my place right now, if I gave everybody the address, and you'd be all in here complaining about me, but it doesn't look too good right now, because it's a project that's under construction. It just got wrapped up this fall. So if you want to fly Google Earth and start complaining about people, I'll probably be number 1 on the list.
Okay, that's
But-
clarity.
Fly it over in a year or two, and you're gonna see a pretty damn nice place. So,
Okay, so I'm just asking for clarification.
yeah.
That
I
is
mean,
listed there.
The guy's got
and-
65 acres, he could throw 1,000 hogs out there if he wanted to start hog farming tomorrow without even coming in here.
Okay, great, that's what I needed.
Then you'll have some complaints.
I'm not complaining, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
There's no complaining, I'm
No, I
just
think-
reading my facts and listening to the people.
That sounds good.
and- yeah.
Anything else on this IUP? Clarifications? Questions?
Wow, I worked so hard tonight, you can't even ask.
Reiner?
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, what can be done to cover up or move or restore some of this vehicles and whatever's on the property line, so that she doesn't have to look out of her window and see it?
Well, I'd have to say that
Give me
if
the,
it was still there, some kind of buffering would be in order. I mean, we do that for commercial, commercial zoning abutting residential zoning, we require. So some form of buffering, if it was still there. Like I said, I went out and visited the property. I didn't see what was in these pictures tonight, so I don't know.
Is there a date on those pictures, ma'am?
April. looks
April.
like.
April 28th this year.
So what did you say that was left or was not?
I mean, I didn't see anything like this, but. Not to say that some kind of buffering.
I think what just for clarification, I think what the permit says for residential zone business and what we've always enforced is, what it says is, no outdoor display or storage of materials, byproducts, junk, et cetera, associated with the residential zone business is allowed outside. We have, throughout the years here, when we've issued residential zone businesses, any equipment or things that were associated with the business were required to be inside the building. So we've been consistent with that, with as far as whether it's trucks or equipment. What we haven't regulated, if you own a forklift or you own any piece of equipment because you own it, because you have a farm or tractor or whatever, we don't make you screen those things. I'm not saying that people don't have junk on their property, because we have complaints weekly on different things that people store in their yards. So do people have treasures that other people think that are junk? Yes. And my suggestion to people is, don't store it on the property line, don't store it behind your shed where others can see it. If you don't want to look at it, your neighbors certainly don't want to look at it either. So I always tell them to be aware and be neighborly to others when you have your stuff in the yard. So I think we have two different issues here. You have, the applicant has a lot of stuff, apparently. I haven't been out to the property, so I don't know what kind of stuff, but just from what's been told here, it appears he has stuff. Elroy has indicated to me that, just in discussion here, that he has some things. So you can ask him to screen it, but again, you know, that's something, that's a compliance issue, but it's not an IUP issue. The interim use permit has certain criteria, and if he's met all the criteria, then you can make a recommendation. It doesn't mean that you can't say, and in addition to that, it's been brought up in the public hearing that you have some stuff on the property line, can you screen it like you've asked him to do? But I just want to clarify that it's two separate issues. One's an interim use for a residential zone business, and the other is that he has junk that's visible from a neighbor. Something commonly we get complaints about all the time at the city. So you can ask him just like I ask others. Put your stuff not on the line, put some screening in between, put some trees in, put it in a different location, put it inside a building.
But it can't be a condition of the permit.
Well, what if those things are for the business?
Then there's no outdoor storage. That's what the condition
Well, what
is.
is some of that stuff personal and some of it?
His answer said was, no visible outdoor display and storage of materials, products, debris, et cetera, will be present on the site except for vehicles and equipment used in the proposed business, but he'll have to store that inside the building. That's standard, that's with any residential zone business.
So everything that's out on this fence line of these old folks here has to be put into a building?
No, if it's his stuff, meaning stuff for his house, stuff for his, if it's not associated with the residential zone business, it can be in your yard because it's your stuff.
Right.
However, if your neighbors are complaining about your stuff, then you have to get rid of your stuff, screen your stuff, put it somewhere else. As I've explained to plenty of other people who get it once I explain it to them.
Well, then,
How do you enforce that?
You can't, because you can say, that's my stuff.
Oh, yes, we do enforce it, because we say you have to remove it, put it somewhere else, screen it to move your stuff. I mean, because, you know, and again, we're here to, you know what I mean, at least for me, you know, when I have two neighbors that are not getting along for a particular reason, I try to work it out, you know what I mean? Now, they don't like it when I get involved, you know, sometimes you have to work it out, but when you can't work it out, I do step in. So in this particular case, you know, you can certainly say you've gotten a complaint at the public hearing, and now you'd like to address the complaint, just like I would have at the front desk.
You're better at it than we are.
Yeah, no doubt.
I
get quite
have a little
confused.
experience, so. But again, you can direct me to do that, and I will certainly do that.
Sure. They both said they want to be good neighbors, so why don't we address it and see what we can do with it?
I have asked Dave, in the 15, 20 years that we've lived out there, a few times, would you please clean it up? Oh, yeah, I will. Have you done it? No, he'd take his stuff and he would move it over to the side. Or, just recently, a couple months back, 2 big semi-trucks come in and start cleaning out stuff.
Seems like a few more pine trees back in there. Some screening. Will go a long way.
And I didn't want to come before you people and ask them to clean it up. I personally, when he came to our home, I took him out that window, by our window, and I said, would you please clean it up?
Go ahead, come on, you have to come up, state your name and address for the record.
Are we reopening, Garth?
Yeah. Evening.
John Williams. What do you, need my address?
Yeah.
Oh, 16851 Potomac Street. I've only met Dave a couple times, and he seems like a pretty decent guy. He seems reasonable to me. So basically what we're trying to do here is decide whether we're gonna let him run his business out of his home. Bottom line, basically. I live 2 doors down. Brian, my buddy here, he lives right next door to Dave. And we were talking the other day, he's quiet as a mouse. If there was like trucks running in and out of there, you know, and you know, business stuff, we would know it. Because the only time we see him is at night when you see headlights. You wouldn't be able to tell that he's running a business back there. So besides the stuff, Dave, that you have, that, you know, okay, yeah, you've been dragging your feet there, buddy. And yeah, I agree. If this nice young lady here wants to look out her back door, she should be able to. So, but besides that, though, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't give him a permit to run his business. There's absolutely no reason not to. He's not doing anything to harm anybody in the area. I haven't heard any of these people say, oh yeah, he's making all kinds of noise. Oh yeah, he's bothering everybody. Well, he's not. There's no reason not to. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You want to close the hearing again? Actually, I already gave you an opportunity to speak. All right, Tom, come on up.
Open her
We're
back.
gonna open back up.
Problem you have here is your damn ordinance, you know, the way it's written up. And you have it in there that having this permit that he's trying to get is a privilege, not a right, which limits it how far it can go. So why don't you issue a short one, let's say 1, 2 years, 3 if he needs it, 2, and then have him move over to the commercial zone where his business can flourish. Gives him time to find something over there on Lake Drive or in Freeway District. And he can have all the stuff he wants there to pile the high as he wants. Problem solved for you and for him. Simple as that, it's right in the ordinance.
Thank you, sir.
And then he can move his stuff away that's on that fence line, either to his new location or back in the woods closer to his own residence, out of view. And my God, he's got a beautiful place back there.
It is, it's a beautiful place.
I don't know if he'd be agreeable to that or think that's a solution. There's plenty of places out there on Freeway Drive for, you know, both sides that are up for grabs.
I can't force people to go buy a commercial
No,
property.
you can't, but, you know, he's got a nice business. My dad was an electrical contractor, commercial electrical contractor, much like himself. He ran a big business. I worked for him. I know how hard it was to, you know, keep the wheels greased. But, you know, you have to live within the ordinance. That's what rules are for. Your call.
Thank you, sir. Closing the hearing again. Come on up, Dave.
Are we?
Yeah, we'll reopen.
Dave Pavolny. I guess if I'd like to just say one thing, the reason that I need to run my business out of my house right now is my wife has a brain disease, and she doesn't have a lot longer to walk, and she is the half of my business. And if these people want to get to the level to get into my life to see why I have to do what I have to do, I'll just put it out there. My wife needs to work near where I am so she can take care of our 5 children and run my business, to help me run my business. So if you people want to understand where I'm at in my life, that's where I'm at. So I need this interim use permit so my wife can walk 400 feet. Typically, she drives 400 feet to the barn because she can't walk that far. So that's why I need this. If you guys want to keep going on this, we'll do it.
We're closing her.
Yeah.
So let's get to business here.
Mr.
Any
Chair.
other questions?
Or, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Your question.
No.
No questions.
No questions.
Mr. Chair, a motion? Give me an opportunity, I'll screw this up. Mr. Chair, I recommend that we, the Planning Commission, move forward to the City Council, the IUP application for Daveco Technologies Incorporated. Address 16731 Potomac Street, Columbus, Minnesota, with the findings of fact 1 through 15, with the change in number 9 to reflect Monday through Saturday. And recommendations 1 through 10. Recommend this go forward with our recommendation for approval.
So we need a second? I'll second the motion. Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Yeah, just a question for clarification. You amended the findings to change weekdays to Monday through Saturday. We have a reference in item number 5 in the conditions that
Oops.
limited
Changing
to
number 5
weekdays.
in recommendations.
I just want
as
to know
well,
if you're being consistent.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Dean.
Including the,
Are you consciously leaving the permit
Oh,
at 10
yeah.
years?
At 10 years, yes, sir.
Then there's no point in changing the finding in number 5 regarding the ordinance reference.
Changing 5.
To be 5?
Yeah,
Didn't we decide it's 5?
yeah, that's what I have.
You'll have to vote that up or down. I was just looking for consistency for the minutes.
If I could amend it, sir? Since there's question 5 or 10, recommend 10 with the advice of counsel. If he recommends that the ordinance calls out 5, then we go with 5. Otherwise, 10.
so leave that up to the council.
Leave that up to council
Yeah.
for the city council.
Well,
He to interpret
that's your motion.
our yeah.
I'll second that motion. So basically, what we're saying there is that we're leaving it up to the councils
For the term.
for the term.
For the term.
The term of the IUP,
Correct, sir.
correct. So any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Elizabeth, I thought you just said that it was a 5-year, 5 years per the ordinance.
The ordinance, how it is read and has been interpreted in section 7A, 734, says interim use permits shall be valid for a term of 5 years. What the applicant brought up was there is another section of the code that talks about process, and it does not talk about term. And so I think there was some question as to whether or not there was some clarification needed in the interpretation. And the attorney can do that, and tell us, whether this applies to all interim use permits or not. Dog kennels, if you read on, that has a 10-year term. So there is some different terms for different types of permits in the residential district. And so I think that's where the clarification was, whether or not this 5-year is across the board if it's not further determined in the code. So again, that's a legal issue, and I'll leave it up to them to decide, because they write the code.
Which you'll have the attorney, obviously, at the council.
Well, this question will come up in the minutes, and he'll have an answer by the city council meeting.
Thank you.
So, any other discussion on the motion?
Not sure, as long as it was clear enough.
Okay, I think we're gonna call for a vote then.
Aye.
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 Aye. So this will go before
At the next meeting on the 12th.
the 12th. Make sure Dave knows that. So now we have a 2040 comprehensive plan. Dean?
You got a copy of a spreadsheet that was put together by Bolton and Mink that relate to the comments that have been received over the last 6 months. You want to take a recess for a minute? And
Sure, we'll take a
people,
short, very
Yeah.
short break.
might be easier to.
Which ones do you want?
It makes me very sad that that went personal, and we were just trying to find the facts.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I
just
thought,
really shitty
there's
that
definitely-
I feel attacked because he feels it's personal, and I just want to ask questions.
I don't
That's
think,
really
I
a
think it was the manner in which you asked the question.
I guess, I was
It
just
a
trying to go
statement.
through all this list, but I think that he was
He
also
was
being
just
thin-skinned to me a
But I
little
think he
bit.
clearly is.
Maybe I asked it wrong, I was just trying to fire all the facts I was getting there, fired at me.
Next time, ask it on the first Wednesday of the week, not the third Monday.
All right. But it makes me sad, though. It's like, wow.
Well, it is sad. The whole state of the city is actually kind of sad.
I'm sorry?
She said it's sad, and I agree, it is kind of sad.
Oh,
Well, yeah, you couldn't even get back to the facts of this because there was so much personal stuff. And then every time you'd ask something, if you didn't say it absolutely correct, somebody was angry.
I think everybody's angry. I mean, I think.
Oh, wow.
Pictures that-
Well, it's just a lot of facts, and our job is to decipher the facts based on this.
Which we did. We
I
did a
thought
good-
so.
We did a good job.
Phew, I don't think so.
yeah, for the first time.
No, everybody was,
For it?
well,
I
yeah, but
think
because
you
it's,
did a
it's
good
not,
job.
I'm not going to
Tammy
deny
did a
any-
good job.
I don't want anybody
so
to
hard
not
on yourself.
do business. We just make people follow the rules of these.
That we do, and here we have,
And
this is
so-
my problem with IUP, is you have 1 million businesses in this town not doing it, and this is probably why.
start holding them all.
And now we have somebody trying to do it legit, and then he gets chastised.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm not, hey, I don't.
And for ulterior
again, I'm gonna-
motives, clearly.
Again, I'm gonna stop and step back, though, wait a second.
Yeah, I know. Well, come on, Jesse,
The
Jesse.
day after he lost, he.
Well, that's not what
Well,
I'm saying.
That, I don't know what his motives are, you know, but all I know is what I'm facing what's.
And again, that shouldn't come
Well,
into
I'm not,
play.
I don't know, that's something you could ask him tonight. I mean, we all could ask him that tonight, but now here he is.
We'll have plenty
Here he
more,
is going
don't
in
worry.
legit.
There'll be plenty more that'll have to come in and get their IUP.
Well, exactly.
Are they policing it now?
I
Is
said this
that
with
why?
that
That's
Swenson
must be
guy.
what they're doing.
I mean,
So if they're policing
But
one,
I
they'll
would have
to
never
police
asked that question,
everybody.
why are you here tonight? I'm here to decipher the facts from that.
Well, that's what I try to do too. I
Yeah.
mean, like the Swenson guy, I
And
mean,
so
I
why
got
would-
kind
so
of
what-
upset
what
because everybody was like jumping his shit. And
No.
he's got, I drive by that place all the time. I drive right by going to my place. I never see one car there. The guy's selling cars, he's got them all tucked away in the barn. I've never seen a customer in there test driving or anything. And everybody was on it, jumping in and stuff. And I'm like, you know, this is what we want. We want these people to come in, do IUPs.
Yeah.
Why are we jumping them?
Right, and all I wanted to do is, all I wanted to say, but I didn't get a chance to say, is maybe we should make it 5 years, because then we can kind of, then the city has something to clean up the junk, because you can say it's your stuff, but, you know, in reality, it's part of the business.
Well,
But then who's gonna go out and police that,
That's
you
the
know?
whole thing. My deal, I mean, I got a guy next to me at my new place. I buy the place, 25 acres. I get off the busy road. My neighbor starts a sawmill business. He throws a sawmill in the backyard, shipping container, he's got a skid loader. And guess when his hours are? Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And everything after 5.
Well, I know, I got somebody behind
So-
who's stump grinding and,
He's in Columbus, yeah. my next door neighbor, so my buffer zone is the one that I'm buying, is pine trees, and I'm planting them, and it's gonna benefit me
Right.
as well as him. I'm putting in the buffer zone for him, but, I mean, I'm not gonna come in here and start whining and complaining and go to war with my neighbor, you know?
I know.
Then the guy. Let's get this meeting going.
Yeah, let's
here.
get done. I want to get out of
Get
here.
back on track.
Give me that letter back, Elizabeth.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'll tell you another funny one. The guy is in my house.
I just wanted to say, I want to testify.
Yeah, this same neighbor.
Testify.
Finally,
Praise the Lord. There ain't no hate.
he's showing my house.
Just do your job. Let me do my job.
He just walked right in. Hey, next time I see him, I'm gonna tell him to charge him. Welcome to Columbus. Yeah. Well, he's from St. Paul, guy moved up here. So Dean, we're gonna discuss the 2040 comprehensive plan.
I will do that. So I'm looking at two versions of spreadsheets that had comments.
The 12-1 one is the most recent one.
Pardon?
The one that's dated 12-1 is the most recent one.
Yes. And so officially, well, we started within our 6-month deadline. We had 4 pages of comments, a couple of the watersheds, Chisago County, Hugo, Lino Lakes, Anoka County Parks, and that's it. The next day, after the expiration, we got 3 more pages from
DNR.
the DNR. I think there was one comment from the DNR that talked about a clarification affecting some of the boundaries that we showed, changes that were made from the last comprehensive plan. And we will make all of those corrections. There are several others, and if you look at the right side of this column, it's our initial response. When somebody references a typo in the document, we'll make the correction. There are no substantive land use issues here that impact the decisions or discussions the Planning Commission and the council had with respect to our own residential or commercial industrial land use districts. There aren't any changes that impact the sewer staging or anything of that magnitude, but we did get, in particular from Anoka County, some revisions to park boundaries for Rice Creek and to make a distinction between Columbus Lake Conservation Area from it being regarded as a part of that regional park. And again, those we will do. They're not simple in the sense that even a 10-acre change as a result of these boundaries, it offsets all of the land use categories, and a consequence, even though it's not likely to be dramatic, if there's an increase from in actual park acreage that we may have been showing, there could be a slight percentage increase in total regional parkland, and it's going to come from something. In that instance, it'll all come from rural residential, so you see a slight drop, but I think those sorts of things are imperceptible. Many of the comments from the DNR include things that are important policy statements from their perspective. I don't mean to suggest that we wouldn't do them, but it's often not the sort of thing that you debate in a comprehensive plan. If you chose to establish new policies regarding the management of either state lands or perhaps the biodiversity of an area, it's a pretty significant thing, and that's really what I would suggest you look at in an ordinance rather than the comprehensive plan. So you'll see a number of responses to the DNR that simply say we acknowledge the particular comments. There's another category in here that talks about anticipated comments from the Metropolitan Council. That's strengthening the list of tools that we might have to provide affordable housing. We're going to be careful in all of those instances not to establish broad policy statements that tip your hand in whether you are or you aren't going to specifically perform in a certain fashion. In other words, we're not going to change this document without your knowledge that says we're going to build 2,312 affordable housing units in the city. Our existing policies don't prohibit the inclusion for affordability. Our old comprehensive plans indicated that. Many of our policy statements to that regard simply say we're going to look at or examine all tools that are available. You don't have an affordability option in your community within the rural area simply because the lot size and so forth, unless it's an existing home that might be in need of rehab, and we make that reference in the document where we're saying we're going to promote rehab to existing homes as a method of trying to accomplish affordability. If you were really to perform with affordable housing in the community, it's going to be in your sewer district, and we have identified one area specifically for that opportunity, but we're not locked in to guarantee that any portion of that would include affordable homes. It's just that they're there. Some of the agencies, like the Metropolitan Council, would like all communities to go out on a limb and say 20% of our homes built in the next 40 years will be affordable. I don't know any community that responds that way other than some of the central cities or inner ring suburbs do have very specific goals. You've seen in the newspaper a lot of the comment in the city of Minneapolis about taking their single-family district and allowing quads literally anywhere in those districts. There are a lot of people that are unhappy that it might impact their neighborhood personally, and it sounds like their council's going to do it. We're not going to make any changes like that without you having had very specific review of those performance options. And so I'm just trying to explain that a lot of these comments are anticipated, and we're not going to do the dirty work of some of the others, but we will make all of the clarifications on any of the errors, whether it's a simple misspelling or it's a boundary between a regional park, or there was a boundary change within the Rice Creek Watershed District. So those are a given. The editing in the document is really going to take us another couple of weeks. That's just based on scheduling, not personally mine, but with Bolton and Menk, with a number of these projects coming up. As you may recall from our last draft of the comprehensive plan back in May, most of these tables, all of the maps were referenced as figure XX. We have to make those references within the text, but we can't make one because then they're all out of kilter. So that's the very last thing. I found an error in one of the tables, the way it was constructed. I'm questioning whether it's necessary as an actual commitment or requirement of the Metropolitan Council. If it isn't, I'd rather get rid of the whole table. And that upsets all of the numbering and the sequencing. We have some documents that I just got last week from the city engineer regarding updated utilities. And we had to have them simply take off their reference to a figure or a table so that at the last minute we're not going to hand draw them, but those will be added at the last minute. So in May, when the Planning Commission held public hearing and advanced this to the City Council adopted a resolution that simply said, we accept the plan for adjacent to review and authorize changes necessary to submit it to the Metropolitan Council. And on the basis of this list that you have here, it's my assumption that we're not going to bring any of those final comments back to you because they're not substantive in the plan. And if there are any responses that you take exception to that, I'd want to talk to them. In other words, we have to submit this on December 31st, and you've got one more meeting. So if there's a question, let's hear about it tonight. If there's a change that you want us to come back at your next meeting and say with certainty whether there will or won't be a particular change. Otherwise, I'm just saying, the document that goes to the Metropolitan Council outside of these clarifications is going to look remarkably similar to what you had in May. When the Metropolitan Council is done with this, there are likely to be changes in the document. We're not required to come back and have a public hearing. Some communities do that, or they may simply have a public meeting in which the final document with the notations of, okay, so we had a May draft, you had a December draft, now you got a final review copy by the Metropolitan Council, what changed? And you can have that explanation before the plan is adopted. So we're taking these comments, if it's necessary before it goes to Met Council, we're making those. You're going to see the Metropolitan Council's formal comments and a different document in all likelihood, although it may, I'm assuming, going to be very minor changes, more clarifications. And then we're going to ask you to approve that at that time. That's likely to be February or March. So they have 120 days to review these plans, and they're probably going to get 100 of them on December 31st. It's going to be a tall order for them to finish that. Did you have a specific question?
Well, we just were given this at the table
Yep,
tonight.
no, I
We got in,
understand.
So we haven't had a time to actually go through all of it.
Yeah, I got mine on Friday, and again, the comments on the right indicate whether we're going to make a correction. And when you see that statement, you can go over there and glance at it, and if it's typographical, which a number of these are, of course, we're going to make those changes. When you see something that says acknowledge the comment, it may be like one from Lino Lakes, which said the abutting land uses are generally consistent. Well, they're making a statement, we're not going to change anything. Had they come back and said, gee, you've got light industry next to our residential district, you're still not compelled to make that change, but you might want to talk about it. We talked about those in our public meetings last spring. We identified areas adjacent to Lino Lakes. We also identified areas in Hugo and the city of Forest Lake. There's a difference in those communities as well. Sometimes you hear, well, we've got rural residential next to your commercial district, but the community's long-range plan is for commercial, or it's reserved for commercial. They use a variety of different terms. And in that regard, I think in our presentations last May, we were generally consistent with all the neighboring communities, either with existing land use compatibility or what they were proposing next to ours. So I don't want to put you anywhere other than you can take this and look at it, and you can call me direct or Hyla, and we can answer any specific questions you have. I honestly anticipated that we'd have gotten comments back from everybody in October. This time, throughout the region, people, particularly the agencies that you have to read most of the comments from, the counties, the DNR, MnDOT, Metropolitan Council, if you submitted an informal review, all came in the month of November. We just didn't have that many specific comments early in the process.
Sounds good. Any questions on the 2040 comp plan for Dean?
No, sir.
So what I'll do is, we do have a meeting on December 19th. I have a variance application that we will look at. And then if you do have comments back, when I talked to Hyla today, she said there was still plenty of time. If you had something that you wanted to bring to her, that she would still have time to put in the comp plan.
So this is kind of homework for the next 2 weeks. Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, looking at, and then, so the proposed response, that's what you guys are thinking?
That's our answer, and so we identify who the comments came from, and again, you can, immediately, when it says make correction, when you look at them, they're typos, or it's a clarification or a correction. If it says acknowledge the comment, it's either that a response isn't necessary, or in the case of some of the lengthy responses from the DNR, and again, because I'm involved in several other communities, you can just about go down the list and say, well, it's not Lamprey Pass out in Carver County, it's X. And they'll change the names, and they're issuing the same types of comments. And I understand, you know, they've got their own initiatives that they go by, and you've got your own regulations that you live by, and it's hard to accommodate everyone. We generally know in advance without late comments what transportation issues are because they don't change that much over time other than specific activities. So we update information about local roads that either just got improved, are in the process of being improved, or may be scheduled in the next 20 years. But a lot of the DNR comments, if they're not border area, and, you know, they ask us to observe breeding areas for eagles. It's not a comp plan response. I'm sorry, it's not that it's unimportant, but it's just not there. When they say, hey, the Wildlife Science Center is no longer on our property, we take that out of the document.
So an example, Hyla asked me about a boundary map for the WMA. And originally, the parcel that was right here was still in Brown, and this parcel wasn't in Brown. And I did call up Anoka County. I said, okay, so the land transfer happened earlier this year for this parcel. It was in a sheriff's sale. And how come this wasn't updated? And it just seems like there's a big lag in updating the GIS map from the Anoka County records. And so he did tell me he would make some updates. So he made those updates, but I just looked at the bottom of the map and he did not make others. So I'm not sure what's going on because I identified also these parcels here, there's two of them that's also for Carlos Avery. So what Hyla ended up doing is she used the base information out of the GIS, and so now is having to correct some of those boundaries because they weren't updated in the system. So as I identify the ones that I know happened, we're sending them over to Anoka County and trying to try to update all the maps.
If we do a property search when it's a residential permit or whatever the case may be, and you click on a particular parcel and all of a sudden we see that's DNR now. We've not been notified other than there is a process for that to occur, and it could have occurred 8 years ago and none of us remember that it's there. And so there are a lot of methods where these maps get changed, and I guarantee you it's like everything. The minute this plan is done, there will be something that's not correct. It's just, as you know from all your ordinance language, you wish you'd said something else. And so this is an ongoing process. You can amend the plan and you can amend your ordinances all the time. And frequently we do.
Well, seems like it's not that difficult of homework to get accomplished in 2 weeks. I mean, it's straightforward. You read it.
If someone were to come back in 2 weeks and give you the document and had every table reference and everything else in here, and as a result of, and I don't see this happening, you said, let's get rid of table 3.3, then everything in the document, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I can tell you, the little things are not what we want to catch now. It is at the bitter end. But if there's something substantive, which is what we've always focused on, we want to get those up front. So before we farm this out, we've made sure that our neighbors understand that this property is commercial. It's not residential. I mean, that's a major change in my mind. But whether we add a policy to protect bald eagles, in the scope of things, it's not significant.
Like native species, 1.7, encourage private and public developments to be planted with native flowers, grasses, shrubs, and tree species. You acknowledge it. I mean, I don't know where that fits into, it's a great idea for everybody. You know, we need pollinators, butterflies are important, and we got to attract as many as we can, but acknowledging the comment, I agree with, you know.
We've got reference to Blandings, turtles, and other areas, and again, from the DNR's perspective, I'm not in any disagreement with them, but there's a limit in what our comprehensive plan can and should do, and that's not to ignore state objectives or even some of the policies, but the ones that are significant to us that have many variables involved. We have strict environmental rules, and I'll just use the example of the environmental review process. Whether you do an environmental assessment worksheet or whether you do a full EIS, there are very specific things that must be addressed in that document, Blanding's Turtles. We may put a culvert under a road to make safe passage from one wetland to another for a Blanding's turtle. That's not a comprehensive plan statement, other than we have very general statements that, you know, we appreciate the environment, we appreciate the woods, but when somebody talks about no more clear cutting, that's an ordinance issue, it's not a comprehensive plan issue. And so we're careful not to tip your hand. I mean, in the tenure that I've been with you, we created very strict landscaping requirements, and then more recently, we backed off on those. If that was in a comprehensive plan, you'd have to have a public hearing, send those comments to all the neighbors and the Metropolitan Council. When it's an ordinance item, you make those decisions internally at the time you need without a 6-month process. So we're a little careful to that. But again, as you have time to go down through these, I had one community where the question to the Planning Commission was, or raised at the Planning Commission meeting just on Monday. So everybody's going through this at the very last minute. The Metropolitan Council said, gee, your employment forecasts for the year 2040 were met in 2017. Well, I guarantee you, 3 years ago, when those forecasts came out, I sent them a letter and said, your household forecasts seem a little high. This was the city of Cologne, and I think it was like 1,100 homes. There's not a market right now in Cologne, and yet they own their wastewater treatment plant, not the Metropolitan Council, so it's none of their business, really. But I said, your employment forecasts are low. They didn't change them. And in an informal comment on the Cologne plan was, you may wish to request that your employment forecasts be increased. And I'm sorry, after doing this for 40 years, I get to be a little bit of a cynic, and I don't want you to have to cater to somebody when it's gamesmanship. So in their case, the Planning Commission said, well, they should have changed it. Why do we have to? And the Metropolitan Council will come out, and when they get their full plan review, they'll say, well, you should make a formal request to change the Metropolitan Council forecast for employment. No, you should make your changes in your forecast because you were wrong with them in the first place. So again, as I get closer to retirement, you can see I don't like putting up with this.
Do you like telling bald eagles where to nest?
I happen to love bald eagles. I have them all over at my cabin, and up there I would do anything, including lobbying my township to, you know, if it was appropriate, to not ruin that particular resource. But I don't think it's a comprehensive plan item.
Right, I agree. I like bald eagles too. Okay, so that concludes city administrator's report.
I just wanted to have everyone note that the council is going to meet twice in December. I just want you to make note that their second meeting is not going to be on Wednesday, but it's going to be on Thursday. So instead of December 26th, it'll be December 27th. So it is not a typo. That is going to be the council meeting.
I just
date.
realized
Sorry?
there's no public open forum on here. We'll do it between 9 and 10. 9:5. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's the only thing I have. I just wanted to make sure, because whoever, I don't know who's after Jody in the schedule, but that person, oh, just have to know that it's Thursday, not Wednesday.
Yep, that's what Rochelle told me, this 27th. We need to, can I just add that in there, 9.5, for public open forum?
Yes.
Public open forum. Anyone for public open forum? Usually we have you come up here, state your name and address, you know the formalities. It's all about the minutes, Tom.
Okay.
It seems tonight we have something I got with Tom Olson, 1332 Alliance Street, that may be missing from our ordinance, and maybe you can tell me, is there anything in there about the American Disabilities Act as it refers to our ordinances? You know, for like Dave, he says his wife's got a problem for medical conditions. I have a friend that he works out of his house too, and he does a financial advice, and somebody like that, you know, you would want to have some leeway. And the way that seems to be written, that I'm understanding here, there isn't. So maybe that should be something you should look at in the ordinance to see if it needs to be added.
I'm not aware of anything that refers to ADA, but I have this new tool now that I can actually search. I don't have to rely on my memory anymore. I'm going to look. I don't think so. I don't recall anything in there with, because we rely on statute. But we'll look.
Could I just add, as a federal standard, all communities are required to fulfill or meet all ADA requirements. That's from parking stall sizes to
Yeah,
whatever.
but as far
But
as-
in terms of having any preference to ADA folks, there's none that I'm aware anywhere in the city code, and there's no statement in the comp plan. But every community has to meet all the federal standards. And so we often employ that or raise questions with commercial proposals. That can range from handicap bathrooms to, again, the design of parking stalls. But I'm not aware of any local preferences.
Anything for business?
Pardon?
Anything for like the,
No. Certainly nothing in,
it
that,
seems to run into direct conflict with, what we ran into tonight.
Well, I think ADA is part of building codes, like, you know,
Right.
there's
Safety.
buildings
Yeah.
and bathrooms, you gotta
Swimming
be certain
pools.
sizes to allow wheelchair access and turnaround and stuff like that, you know. So I think it's accounted for through statutes or whatever, what have you. Maybe not on
Maybe you could
on a
take
city
the lead on
basis.
this.
Yeah, the only thing that I know of that we have in our code that points to that is if you have elderly parents, we do allow housing on the same property if they're parents. So you can put a temporary trailer on your property if you have elderly parents that need attention from, as long as you go through the permit process. And so that's the only thing I'm aware of that's, you know what I mean, of that nature.
Yeah.
Something for your agenda.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public open forum?
I was just concerned about that, maybe this is the wrong forum, but 97's got that barrier that comes all the way to Hornsby. And my daughter goes out there with my grandson and stuff. It's hard to see to get around there. Is there any way, I don't know how to propose it, but there should be those barriers moved over so you got a turn lane to get Hornsby.
Yeah,
It's bad. I mean, you can't, if you're in a low car, you can't see coming through there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't know what the forum is or who to talk to or how to propose it, but I've been around that stuff my whole life and it just isn't right there. It should be a turn lane there, and I think it's still tar on that side. I'm not sure though.
you know, I don't think they've taken the shoulder out, but I'm gonna see the engineer tomorrow, and so we'll,
Is there just somebody you can
Yep.
talk to about it? It's hard to make a turn there when it's kind of narrow. It's really narrow coming in.
yeah.
I'm sure Danny Mike knows that too. how it is.
And I would agree, if you're in a low car, there's no way you're gonna see over the
I
turn.
mean, maybe if you're in a tall
Yeah.
truck, but even to make, I imagine with his big truck, it's hard to make a right turn there unless you're coming around. But it's a concern of several people. trying to-
Sounds good, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Anyone else? Public open forum? Public open?
Yeah. What do you say?
He looked at it, but
feel that John has a very, we need to do something there, because somebody's gonna smoke there.
So how far are does the Jersey barriers go all the way up to Hornsby? Right, all up to it? Yeah, then, okay.
So you gotta make like a 90-degree turn to get around there.
And not even that, but if there's a low-profile car going eastbound? Yes.
Yes,
You
you
see that
can't
car
see
on the
because,
door.
because the road's tipped like that. If you got a little car, you're back ways, but you can't see coming around. Even worse at night.
Okay.
There you go. Anyone else? Okay. Planning Commissioners report?
I have nothing to report.
No?
Nothing, sir.
I have nothing either. Jody, you're at the next meeting,
Yep.
so a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye,
Didn't get that photo.
Get out of here, man.
Car, so don't leave.